Hello everyone, my name is Connor and I'm the Music Fanatic, and I am coming to you with part 4, I believe, of my top favorite albums per decade per year list. Last 3 times we did this. We did the 70s, we did the 80s, and then we did the 90s. The 90s being my favorite decade in music, and now we go on to the decade that I grew up, which is the 2000s. 2000 until 2009. And now we're in a new decade, we're in the 2020s, so maybe at the end of this, well, never mind. Yeah, at the end of this decade, if I still have a fucking YouTube channel, might do that. But, yeah, so although I said that the 1990s is my favorite decade in all of music, some of my favorite albums of all time actually came out in the 2000s. And of course, this is the decade that I grew up in, so all of these are probably just going to be strictly personal when it comes to this list. And if you thought that I had a lot of honorable mentions and shit for the last ones, the stack of albums that are next to me right now is gigantic. So let's not waste any more time and let's get into it with the year 2000. So my two honorable mention albums when it comes to it are oddly enough from a genre of music that I very much do not enjoy actually, and that's nu metal. That being said, two monumental albums came out in that genre that I actually still enjoy to this day, and one of them is a childhood album of mine, and that is Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park. The other one is an album that I still just say is a generally fucking amazing album, and that is White Pony by the Deftones, which is one of my favorite albums by the Deftones. But the album that I think conquers all when it comes to the year 2000 and is probably my pick for just the best album of the 2000s in general, and this is an album that was one of my introductions to this band, and I wouldn't recommend it as an introduction to the band, by the way. I would recommend other albums, but Kid A by Radiohead. They basically shocked the world yet again with, that back in the 90s, they were a rock band and everything, released like rock albums, and with a hint of electronica, just completely changed up the fucking game with this album. It's completely just art rock and like electronic. I've already reviewed it on this channel. You all know what my opinion is on this album. This album is a full-on 10 out of 10 for me, and it is without a doubt the best album of the year 2000. So a few of these years, I have so many honorable mention albums, I actually can't even talk in depth with all of them, and the year 2000 is no exception, because a lot of fucking albums in the year 2001 came out that were just personal taste and ones that like just change genres and that are amazing. So I'm just gonna rattle them off right now. These are not my picks, these are just honorable mentions. Don't kill me, by the way, for some of these honorable mentions, because some of these shouldn't be honorable mentions and they should be the one. But Is This It by The Strokes? Obviously, amazing album, changed the whole fucking thing for indie rock. Discovery by Daft Punk, which is my favorite Daft Punk album. We have Origin of Symmetry by Muse, which is one of my favorite Muse albums. Of course, we have fucking White Blood Cells by the White Stripes. And then an album that I've already reviewed on this channel that I gave a full 10 out of 10 and I think is tied for first place, Toxicity by System of a Down. What album did I pick as the best album of the year 2001 though? Lateralis by Tool. It's the best Tool album. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. I don't want to say it changed the game for heavy metal in the 2000s, but the fact that the song Lateralis still to this day is considered the best metal song of the 21st century says something. And from front to back, this album is nothing but good. So that's my pick for 2001. It was pretty much a no-brainer, even though there was a lot of good albums that came out in 2001. The year 2002 was basically almost a three-way tie. When I say that, I actually kind of mean just a two-way tie, because the honorable mention albums of this year of 2002 are A Rush of Blood to the Head by Coldplay, which is my favorite Coldplay album. Then we got By the Way by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, which was the second to last album that they recorded with John Frusciante before he rejoined the band last year at the very end of it. Then, of course, we have an album by one of the greatest supergroups of all time. It's Rage Against the Machine, featuring Chris Cornell. We have Audio Slave with their self-titled album. But the best album, and my favorite album of the year 2002, in my opinion, is one of the best concept albums ever made, and it was a desert rock album. Features Dave Grohl on drums in the entire album, and that is Songs for the Deaf by Queens of the Stone Age. It's, as I said, one of the best concept albums of all time, and like, the thing I loved about Queens of the Stone Age so much and that I love about this album is that this album and everything around it, no one else really sounds like this album, and I love that about it, and just listen to it. That's all I'm going to say. It's an amazing album. Queens of the Stone Age, Songs for the Deaf, my favorite album, and in my opinion, the best album of 2002. My honorable mentions for the year 2003, one of them is, in my opinion, the actual best album of the year 2003, and that's Elephant by the White Stripes, which is my favorite White Stripes album. The other one, Deja Entendu by the band Brand New, because that's my favorite Brand New album, but an album that basically kind of birthed my musical taste in a way in 2003 came out. And it may be a bit of a weird pick and everything, and some people may not agree with it and everything. My pick for my favorite album of 2003 is Blink-182's self-titled album. And I know that, like, saying Blink-182 this and Blink-182 that and everything, people have their opinions. But my family bought this album the day it came out in 2003, and I think we played it in my dad's car up until the album Neighborhoods came out in the year 2011. So it's my favorite album by Blink-182. I think this album is an absolute bona fide masterpiece, one of the best pop-punk albums of all time. It's one of those albums that literally transcends genre. Like, it's not just a pop-punk album, it's a good fucking album. And it's my pick for the year 2003, my personal favorite, though I think Elephant by the White Stripes is probably the best album of the year 2003. So I suppose I should make the honorable mentions kind of quick on this, because knowing me and knowing who I am, you know what my favorite album of the year 2004 is, but Arcade Fire Funeral came out that year, and of course, Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge by My Chemical Romance came out that year. My Chemical Romance went on tour that year with a specific band that released a specific album in the year 2004, because American Idiot. Did you guess anything else? If you know anything about me or anything about this channel, Green Day is my favorite band of all time. This album is one of the albums that changed my fucking life. It's one of, if not my favorite concept albums ever made. Just, again, front to back, it's a masterpiece. It is not aged a day. If anything, it's aged better. Turn on the news, that's all I'm saying. But yeah, best album of the year 2004 in my opinion, and my favorite album of the year 2004, American Idiot by Green Day. There was really no competition. 2005 is an interesting year because it's actually a year where I actually can't really make up my mind about which one I think is better out of the two. I think I do have my mind made up, but it's a really hard choice because a double album came out that year by the band System of a Down, technically, because can't remember which. Okay, Hypnotize and Mesmerize, the double album by System of a Down came out that year, and still to this day, it's technically the final album by System of a Down, because I don't even know if they're ever going to release another album, but an album that I think tops it just a little bit, and it's not a concept album, yet you could if you wanted to go off with the lyrics and everything about this. 2005, it's actually a virtual band, and you probably know where I'm going with that, because Demon Days by the Gorillaz wins for my favorite album of the year 2005. I remember the first time I heard the song Feel Good Inc. I thought that song was amazing. Listened to the rest of the album, and it still holds up a lot to this day. This is a new collection update, by the way. In a few weeks, when a few albums that I've gotten on vinyl come in mail and everything, I'm probably going to make another vinyl update because I've gotten a lot of records in the last few weeks. But yeah, 2005... easy choice, Demon Days by the Gorillaz. But these albums cannot be forgotten. Whatever people say I am, that's not what I'm not, by the Arctic Monkeys, first album by them. Black Holes and Revelations by Muse, my favorite Muse album. The Devil and God Are Raging Inside of Me by Brand New. One of, if not my favorite two album besides Lateralis, 10,000 Days. And then, as I said, kind of, the final studio album that was released by the Red Hot Chili Peppers featuring John Frusciante on guitar until he rejoined the band in really late 2019. We have Stadium Arcadium. Which one is my favorite album of the year 2006 though? The Black Parade by My Chemical Romance. What is it with the 2000s and having really good concept albums that I love? I mean, in 2002 I had a Songs for the Deaf. In 2004 I had American Idiot, and now I have this album. And it's just, again, it's the Black Parade. If anything, I think the concept on this album, the way it flows in the album, is better than American Idiot, but American Idiot has better music because it's Green Day, though I can't knock My Chemical Romance with the Black Parade because it's another album that's just amazing. The concept album is amazing, and if you knock emo and say emo is shit, you've never heard this album. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, it's 2006. My Chemical Romance, The Black Parade. So I have mentioned the Arctic Monkeys a few times on this, actually now twice, on this list that I'm making of my favorite albums per year, per decade, and blah, 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 this and everything, because in the year 2006, they released their first album, Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not. In the year following that, they released the album Favorite Worst Nightmare, which is my favorite album by them, but Radiohead is the only band that shows up, I think at the end of this, almost 5 times, because In Rainbows. is my favorite Radiohead album, and it came out in 2007. And there's no competition. This is the best album of 2007, and I'm pretty sure this won the band a Grammy. I'm not 100% certain on that, but yeah, In Rainbows by Radiohead is the best album of 2007 and my favorite album of 2007. Really no competition. 2008 is the dud year of the 2000s, in my opinion, because the only other album that I thought of besides this one was the self-titled album by Vampire Weekend. I don't even like Vampire Weekend that much. The other one was Rise Against and their album Appeal to Reason. But if I had to give it to any band, I don't even own this album on vinyl or CD. I've only heard it on streaming. Is Viva La Vida or Death and All His Friends by Coldplay, because it's not my favorite album by Coldplay, but I do think it's up there with them. But yeah, 2008 is unfortunately the dud year of the 2000s in my opinion. But if I had to give it to one album, it would probably be Coldplay with Viva La Vida or Death and All His Friends. So there's 2008 for you. And closing out the 2000s, we have a bit of another dud year, if I'm being 100% honest, in the year 2009. It was like rapid fire throughout the 2000s. From 2000 until 2007, nothing but like gold standard amazing albums came out. Then we reached 2008 and 2009, and in my opinion, kind of fell off just a little bit. But yeah, honorable mention, The Resistance by Muse. But my pick for my favorite album of the year 2009 is by another, well, not another supergroup. I didn't even name a supergroup in this decade. But yeah, it ends with a supergroup, because when you have the powers of Queens of the Stone Age, Led Zeppelin, and the Foo Fighters and Nirvana all working at place with Josh Homme, Dave Grohl, and John Paul Jones coming together and making the album of Them Crooked Vultures, you've got a pretty fucking good album on your hands. And album is no exception. It's one of the best albums made by a supergroup, and it's just it literally encapsulates every band that all those members have ever been in. Led Zeppelin, Queens of the Stone Age, Caius, fucking Foo Fighters, Nirvana has elements of all of those bands and mixes them together. And you'd think with that, it wouldn't really work that much, but it works so well on this album, and it's one of my favorite albums of all time, and it is probably my pick for my favorite or even the best album of the year 2009. So Them Crooked Vultures, self-titled album, is number one for 2009, in my opinion. We yet again have another case of objective versus personal, because my favorite album of the decade of the 2000s is American Idiot by Green Day, but objectively, Kid A is the best album of the 2000s. And so yeah, that's basically how I feel about the 2000s. My favorite album of the decade is American Idiot by Green Day, but I think objectively Kid A is probably the album of the 2000s. Yes, In Rainbows is my favorite album by Radiohead, but there's really no denying that Kid A is an amazing album, and is my pick for the best album of the 2000s. So that's pretty much it. That's my video of my favorite albums of the 2000s. Thank you very much for watching this video. Next up, we're going to be finishing off this list with the last decade, which is the 2010s. So stay tuned for that. If you like this video, hit that subscribe button. Leave me in the comments below album suggestions that you would want me to review, and I will do my very best to try to get to them. That's pretty much it. 3, 2, 1, I'm done. Join me next time for the 2010s.